When you run your own business, accounting is a pain. Personally, it's something that I put off until the very last minute, but it doesn't stop me from regretting not having a clear view of my financials for, if I'm honest, majority of the year. For me, it feels like there are two things I'm always trying to solve for. First, I want to get as clear a view of my financial position as I can. And second, I want to make it as easy as possible to log my data, so my income, my expenses. I don't really want to be fiddling around too long in spreadsheets. I want it to be automated as much as possible, and I want to make sure that my data is actually up to date. There are some excellent SaaS tools out there, and there are probably many more I've never heard of, but frankly nothing really ever stuck for me, and so I decided to have a go at creating an accounting and budgeting dashboard in Notion with some Google Sheets and charts embedded. That's what we're going to walk through in today's video. So first up is the home dashboard. You'll notice that it's quite visually heavy by design. We can talk through quickly what we're looking at, but the main idea is at a glance, I want to get as quick an intuition about my current financial position whenever I check this. This is not actually my data. This is just some dummy financials, but you can imagine we have our last 30 days and upcoming 30 days for our profit and loss. We have a big income and expenses stat. We have a quick view of our 30-day cash flow, next bill, and how many days until it's due. Those are the main things that we're going to see in this home dashboard. We're going to go into more detail on each of them. But again, these charts are going to update dynamically to always show this period. So wherever I am, whatever day it happens to be today when I'm looking at this, it's always going to show me the last 30 days and the upcoming 30 days, just to kind of get a clear view of those windows. So in the Google Sheets, you can break things down by month if you want to compare month to month. There's also a week to week chart in the revenue. But again, if I'm thinking about how do I get the clearest view of my current financial position, that's what I'm looking at here in this home dashboard. So the first item in this menu is a cash flow dashboard. And this is something that I have personally found very useful, especially in freelancing when you have some uncertainty about your expenses, you have some unexpected bills sometimes, you have delays in invoices, you kind of want to be able to know how much you need to earn to keep yourself safe and in the green. And so this is just a very short-term, your 30-day window broken down day by day and showing the cash in bank in this purple line, showing the income or incoming revenue in this green line, and the expenses that are coming up on this yellow orange line. And the main thing to take away from this view is always, okay, where am I currently? This is again a dynamic chart, so it's always going to show you day zero is going to be today, and it's going to show you kind of your buffer zone really is what I try to get out of this particular chart. I always want to make sure that I have a bit of leeway. There are always going to be unexpected bills and things coming up. I also want to try and get a feeling for how my expenses, big expenses and large income spikes are overlapping. But really the main takeaway for this is what's my buffer zone, and how are things crossing over in a way that I never hit zero, which of course is game over. For some of you out there, this may not be something that you ever need to think about, and you're in a much better savings position. But I know, and having spoken to a lot of freelancers, this kind of very tight, a large percentage of freelancers are living from rent to rent, rent check to rent check. And so literally breaking down your expenses and your income day to day for a 30-day window can be quite important to make sure that you don't have those interruptions in cash flow and go into debt in your accounts. So the 30-day cash flow is made up by our revenue and expenses and cash in bank, of course. Our revenue dashboard shows us revenue in weeks, and these weeks are set to weeks of the year as defined in the Google Sheet. It's going to show kind of just generally the pattern of revenue that's been incoming or into the business. Then we have a breakdown of revenue by category. So if you offer some different types of services, or if you have some products or a retainer, maybe you have a few different offerings and you want to break down and categorize your revenue by, say, website design and branding projects, you can do so with the tags, the category tags in this table, also in the Google Sheet. And this is just going to give us a really quick, easy to look at breakdown. So I look at this, it's pretty obvious that majority is coming from client projects, large chunk from other parts of the business. So those are the two main charts for the revenue section. If we scroll down, we have our gross revenue table. And this is the simplest inputting or simplest set of properties that I could pull together for tracking revenue from different projects and different products and things. You can give it a name. So let's say it's branding project number 2. The amount is going to be a formula, so we don't need to input anything here. You can pre-build or input your the categories that you want. Maybe you have a retainer, a product, any other services. You can create those tags for yourself. Let's say this branding. Okay, so branding projects can be a services project when it's due. So this is not the project date that it's due. This is when the invoice is due, when the revenue is expected to come into the business, and that's going to be important for our time series charts. So give that as accurate of a date as you can. Sometimes there are delays, but you try to be as accurate as you can. This is a project. This is a branding project, so it's going to be a single invoice. It's going to be one quantity. Let's say it's 1,500 coming in, and I can link this to a project, and the projects in this CRM financial, the projects are linked to contacts in our CRM. So if I add it to this logo and identity project, it's going to populate this with the relevant contact. That can help us also when we go to our CRM, whoever's responsible for this particular project, that value of this particular invoice is going to be added to the contact. So that's nice when we're trying to look through our contacts. Who are the kind of high value clients that we've been dealing with? That's something that's neat about this setup. Continuing on, project value is linked to the actual project. So that's established when we create a new project. This invoice might just be a part of it. And then this is a copy of the same property, which is an error. So I will fix that. Finally, we have links to the relevant Google Sheets, which need to be updated as well. We're going to cover that in a separate step, but the revenue dashboard, that's the quick tour. The expenses dashboard is going to follow a lot of the same principles as the revenue dashboard. Once again, we have a table below. It's much simpler than the revenue. Feel free to add properties to it if it is helpful for your business, but typically you're going to have more expenses to track. I actually don't use this to track every single individual expense. If you do have a good way of linking the streams between, say, your bank statements or your live banking activity, like some apps do, they kind of pull in your transactions data, that would be ideal. But I personally just try to do this once a week or so and give rough estimates for the larger kind of categories like groceries or something I can lump together. And then the subscriptions and ongoing or repeat business costs, those are easy to add and copy and repeat over time. So again, not the simplest or not the quickest way. It's kind of part of the accounting process, which is frankly quite boring. But we get again a breakdown by category of expenses. We have our upcoming 30 days, and this is why our giving it a date is going to be helpful for these types of time-related stats. We have our next bill, so that's going to filter through and show us the next expense that is in our database and give the days until it's due. And once again, we have a link to our Google Sheet and the full expenses database there. I'm going to jump to the Runway Calculator, which has been built in Causal. Again, this may or may not be especially relevant for you. It's just a simple visualization tool to help us kind of see and get a feeling for how much runway we have, what's our buffer. We can just give our starting cash in bank. We can give any upcoming receivables. Maybe that's an invoice that's just about to be paid. You can also add that to your starting cash in bank if you're totally confident that it's going to arrive. We give our last month's income. We also give a last 90 days income, and that just gives us a bit more of a reasonable average of what to expect. And then this tool is going to show us the situation where if we continue with our current income rate and our current expenses rate, so you also have an expenses tab up here for last month's and last 90 days. Once we input all of these values, this is kind of our if things go as planned view, and this is broken down weekly, so this is week to week. And this is our true kind of buffer, which is if we get no new work, if we have nothing, no new opportunities coming in, how long could we survive basically at our current rate of expenses with our current starting cash in bank? Again, I hope you don't need to use this calculator often, but I do know that a lot of freelancers are in this situation. It's broken down week to week, which I think is a reasonable enough view to get a feeling for how you're doing. But again, feel free to use this tool. It's also going to show you the exact value, runway in weeks and runway in months. I'm going to move through these remaining dashboards a little more quickly since they may be familiar to anyone who has seen some of our other dashboards. The objectives are some goals and targets you can set for yourself with a target value, a check-in date. You can give it a date that you want to reach it by, let's say for this upcoming period. You can update the current value and it's going to give you a progress. We also have our projects database. This is our financials project. So remember we were inputting that invoice for, I believe it was this Acme logo and identity project. If I wanted to create a new project, I could do it directly here, give it a name. I can give it an owner, a client. If this is a new project and I'm just adding it to the database, maybe I need to create a new contact, but if it's an existing contact, I can find them in the CRM here. I can give it an active date, and there's also a timeline view if I want to view it here. This is not really intended to be used for project management. It's just for storing our financials based on particular projects. Again, as mentioned, this is linked to a CRM. If you have one of our other CRM systems, you can also simply link your existing CRM database to these financials properties, and you'll automatically have this, you can create this roll-up of total earnings and some useful factors like that. And finally, the statements and docs. Any repeat reports or invoices or templates that you use, you can store them in this area here. And to wrap up this beta inside sneak peek, we're just going to look at these charts, the back end of what's running this Notion setup. So if you want to access these yourself, in the left menu of the home dashboard, there's a link to the charts. If it's your first time there, just hit the file, make a copy, and you'll have your own version to start playing with. The first tab is going to show all of the charts that are used to build out all of the different workspaces. And if you want to implement this for yourself using your own data, which I imagine you do, you probably don't want to stick with the dummy data, then you're going to need to re-embed these charts. So let's imagine that this is the copied version that you've made. You give it your own name, you give it, you're going to input your own data into these various sheets. Then let's just very quickly, top of the line, let's publish. Let's show how to transfer one of these charts in the Google Sheets into your Notion dashboard. So what you're going to need to do is click on the chart that you want. If you have this side-by-side view, it can make it a little bit easier. But if I'm on the home dashboard, I can search for the chart that I want, income, profit and loss for the last 30 days. That's this one here. I'm going to need to hit the three-dot menu and then press Publish Chart. Now, I can do the embed option or the link. The link is going to be easiest for us. So I've already published this, but it's going to ask you for the first time to hit Publish. Then you'll see this link. So let's take this link. You can just hit Control-C or Command-C, add a new block. And what we're going to do is we're going to search for an embed block, add it, and we're going to paste the link here. If you just directly embed or paste the link, it'll give you an option to embed also, but it doesn't seem to work as well. So you'll have your new data and you need to delete the sample chart. And it's a bit tedious, I understand, but for any of the charts that you want to replace, you can just do that process once, find the chart that you want, update it here, transfer it over, hit Publish, publish the chart, publish, copy the link, create an embed, and you can replace the dummy charts in this template. The other aspect of this, which is to do with filling out the data that populates these various charts, my recommendation would be to, if you're comfortable with Google Sheets at all, would be to input it directly, since it can be, I'm working on ways to make this transfer from the Notion spreadsheet. So for example, in the expenses tab, if we can just very quickly drag and copy these items and add them into the spreadsheet, that's going to save us some time on the copying over and updating our values. But to be honest, with the pivot tables, we're still figuring out the best way to do that so that it doesn't mess up the charts and so that's easy. So again, we are in the beta stage and I'm open to hearing your suggestions and recommendations for how to make this easier. But when it comes to inputting, if you want to play around with this yourself, just so you can see how it's kind of set up for the moment, the dates are, all of the days are showing, even if there's no revenue item, and this is going to make sure that our pivot table is going to give a value for every single day. If you are wanting to play around with the cash flow table, so maybe you're not in a position where you really need to have the profit loss and this type of stuff on your home dashboard, but you would like to make use of the cash flow table, that's something that's pretty straightforward for you to input. You have this view here. We're just going to have days counting up to 30. We're going to have our cash in bank. This is a starting figure that you input. Everything else is going to be calculated for you. The expenses are pulling from the expenses database. Again, if you don't want to update those values, you can always just play around with this 30-day cash flow manually. So you can just input whatever it is. So if you know that tomorrow you have 50 coming up, and you know that you have a project that's kind of due in 5 or 6 days, the invoice is due, you can add that here. You can give a rough estimate. This is something where if you do export your bank statement for the last 30 days, you could just directly input your income and expenses, and you could get a clear 30-day previous cash flow, and you could just project that forward. So again, we're still kind of tinkering with this setup, but I wanted to show you the back end, these charts, and just give you access to start playing around with it for yourself. I understand it's not the most friendly, it's not the friendliest dashboard in Notion that we've done yet, but if you guys think it would be useful to get this cleaned up and really intuitive and easy to use, then I'm happy to take that feedback and develop it further so that anyone could just copy the template and start using it. So a little bit rambling, a little bit of fiddling around, but the main takeaways are, if you guys are interested in seeing this accounting and financials dashboard get developed a bit further, hopefully this beta sneak peek is interesting enough for you to comment and let us know what you'd like to see, and we can develop it further and ship it out to you guys soon.